Welcome to video number 2. This is on the vernal equinox and the sun in Aries. This happens today, March 19th. I usually do these videos a day or two ahead of time, but just timing this month is having it. So it's today, tonight, before bedtime, after dinner. The vernal equinox, the spring between point. So you have the two solstices, one in December, the winter, when there's the least amount of light, and then the one in June when there is the most amount of sunlight during a day, and then the equinoxes have us between those. So you can think of it as something still coming in, kind of like being in the space of something coming into manifestation, because I treat the winter solstice as a kind of new year. The rebirth of the solar principle goes in, it's not enough. There's not very much light, and then it becomes more light. And now we're halfway through what we could think of as a manifestation cycle. And then when there's the most light, at the summer solstice in June, then we have this view on what we've been creating. So right now we're kind of in the middle of it. That's one way of looking at it. You can look at it as an astrological new year as well. Like I treat the winter solstice as a kind of new year and the vernal equinox as a kind of new year. Obviously, vernal spring, the beginning of spring is how we typically think of it here in this hemisphere, in this part of the world. And so and then of course the meaning of Aries, new beginnings, courage, boldness, instinctive action, taking action without thinking too much, unmediated response, instinct, visceral, embodied response. Sometimes we react, but we want to get to the place where we can also respond when necessary. So the sun in Pisces says, surrender, merge, you can let that go. And then the sun hits Aries, time to do something. So you may not know what that is. I mean, it's almost like new moon energy, where I always tell you to let something be birthed out of the darkness because you can't know what it is. It's almost like that. And as I was saying, embodied, visceral, unmediated, meaning not thinking a lot about it, not filtering and not weighing and deliberating, action. You might take a step that you would never take. You might do something new that doesn't fit with what you think your character is. And so there's a sense of not knowing, but trusting your gut, trusting your body, trusting your biochemistry, trusting your instinct. So there's a sense of needing to take action. There's just that reality, needing to take action. But you might not be able to plan ahead too much. You have to allow yourself to do what needs doing. Again, unmediated response. So there's a huge shift from Pisces to Aries. Excuse me. In Pisces, you're not supposed to do a lot. In Pisces, you're supposed to let the year wrap itself up. You're supposed to become okay with feeling part of the fabric that surrounds you. That's a phrase I love to use for Pisces and Neptunian energy, especially because Aries follows Pisces. And so then there's a sense of, got to do what I got to do. And I can't fit in the Aries responses. I can't fit in to this right now anymore, ever again. And so there's a definite reaction often. And that's normal for Mars energy, including the sign of Aries. When I talk about in chart readings, I talk about first house placements associated with Mars and Aries. You have to put yourself first. You have to be self-interested. You have to trust your gut. There's all the things that make you stand out. When we talk about a planet working through, talk about Mars. Mars is your defense mechanism. Mars is what you, without thinking, use to notice threats, things you perceive as threats, and things you figure must be threats because of that thing that happened to you in second grade when that kid said that thing. or whatever. Um, or because the last time you got a registered letter in the mail, it was bad news, whatever, like things you assume are threats. And that's Mars's job in your life. A planet working through the lens of Aries, on the other hand, or on the same lines, lives that way, observing, keeping a lookout for what might be threatening. That's one way to look at it, kind of defensive posture. A kind of a more involved or better explained way to look at it is, in your physical body, you have a primal perimeter alarm mechanism that looks for threats. It's a survival thing. You often talk about survival issues as Pluto, but Mars, it is very much about survival in this way. So we react against what we don't like is the key to this archetype. We know, but we might not know why. It just feels like a threat or doesn't work, and then later we can understand why. And that's why Mars and Aries sometimes have a bad rap for rash action. Even look at the god Aries, tons of rash action. So going from Pisces to Aries, Pisces, relax, chill out, don't worry about it. Gets into Aries, this doesn't work. I don't even know why. I just immediately know this doesn't work. I have to do something else. Trust that. Trust that you may not understand what repels you, what feels toxic, what feels wrong, what feels bad. Trust that that's a real response, because we have been trained to put all of our attention in our minds and let our minds appoint themselves dictators for life. We forget about the body. As you know, following my work and meditation and crystals and energy work stuff, we have to be in our bodies fully if we're going to do anything that matters to us or that matters. Our brains can't accomplish everything that they think they can. We have to be fully embodied, so our hearts and our intuition, and our actual body wisdom and knowledge, instinct, can be online so they can help guide us. So don't look so much at what might bother you. Look at your reactions. Look at your viscerally embodied yes, no responses. Huge part of Mars energy. Look at that. Look at what you can't deal with. Look at what you just realized you slammed the door on. That's the Mars thing. That's the Sun into Aries energy, the Aries response. Sometimes I feel like I want to say this. It's the same kind of spiel I did a little bit with the winter solstice, with this idea of something being born. Sometimes something you've wanted to do for a long time now can get activated. But sometimes it's something brand new that you wouldn't have thought of. So you can think of the Aries newness as either, as encompassing both a new direction to an old dream or a completely new thing you had never thought of. So just kind of allow that both of those things are possible now. There aren't that many aspects here to cover for the sun. We're going to cover them and also the two lunations, including the Libra lunar eclipse. So the first aspect to talk about here is Mercury conjuncting the sun Wednesday, March 23rd. Now this is right around the eclipse. And so Mercury's time here, it's actually just after the eclipse, within a few hours. So Mercury's time next to the sun is really defined by the opposition, by the lunar eclipse. But I will say that whenever Mercury conjuncts the sun, in this case, Mercury's overtaking the sun, which means it's halfway through its direct cycle. And then, of course, it'll go up and then station and then come back, and then we're halfway through its retrograde cycle when it conjuncts it again in a few months. So Mercury is consciousness, Mercury is perception, Mercury is seeing, conjunct the sun, the giant flashlight in the sky, the where our conscious attention is focused, the sun. So you have this opportunity whenever the Mercury conjuncts the sun to see into something. In this case, because Mercury is direct and overtaking the sun, you can put two and two together and move ahead. When it's retrograding back, my idea is that you put two and two together and you realize what happened, or you realize why the thing happened or how you can change it. But in this case, we're talking about putting two and two together, clear perception, let's go. That kind of energy here, especially in early Aries. So shifting to talk about the eclipse, I'll pull up the chart here. Yeah, so it is a lunar eclipse. So let's just there's Aries lunar. There we go. Okay. So Wednesday, March 23rd, just 3 days after the sun enters, and it's about 5 a.m. Pacific. So here's the moon here at 317 Libra. Of course, the sun is at 317 Aries. Mercury here is conjunct the sun, right? So this idea of having clear perception, this idea of having a clear way forward, an idea of what's happening, an idea of what you need to do, it's about action. It's the emphasis of the conscious light of the sun, the giant flashlight in the sky, focused on Aries. Opposing moon in Libra, which always says slow down, ask for help, develop a committee or a pair, and don't assume that moving fast is the only way to get things done. But then what we have actually is, so typically in a full moon, this would be the balance point, and the moon would be saying, hey, that's not the only way to do it, calm down. But here we have a lunar eclipse, meaning that the moon is eclipsed. So the solar principle will shine through more. I think what this can be is kind of a hint in the background or a nagging sense that we could slow down, we could calm down, we could Libra this, we could take this to committee, we could ask for opinion, ask for help, but we might find ourselves temporarily believing that we need to do something on our own when maybe we don't have to, but we have a bias toward that. And so people talk about these cycles of eclipses and whatever's happening 19 years ago. That's if you're into that, that's cool. I don't. I just that doesn't resonate with me. I don't find a lot of data in my own life for those things, like what was going on 19 years ago. But feel free to do research, and if you're into that, that's awesome. But what I like to talk about is the actual effect in the moment. I'm not thinking about these larger cycles in this case. I think about other things in larger cycles, but not these. But anyway, the lunar principle is eclipse. So I haven't said this, I think, in a long time on these about eclipses, but we typically live with the sun and the moon, the solar and lunar principles, in some kind of relationship, some kind of balance. At an eclipse, one is eclipsed, and the other one feels or is louder. And so in this case, the balance point that would normally be here with a Libra full moon, the balance point is quieted somewhat. It's not as obvious. The need is still there to make sure we ask for help, but it might be that in the short term, when we need it, to make sure that we don't assume we should always do something alone, and freight train through it and fight our way through that problem alone and kind of overexert, which would be a Sun, Mercury, and Aries kind of energy. Normally that balance point would be there. In this case, you might find that you really actually need to power through something by yourself. And I think that from a spiritual perspective, I'm just going to invite you to not be too stressed if you need to do that. Without being rude, do what you need to do. Take time to make sure you get your shit done. Here we have Mars sextile that moon, which means Mars is trine the sun. So it makes this even louder. Mars in a fire sign, Mars in Sagittarius. Yeah, go do it. It's supporting the sun thing, while the moon, the lunar principle of, hey, calm down, is a little quieted. So just expect around this eclipse time, and a few days before, we're in it now. I'm kind of feeling it now, for 3 or 4 days away. And a few days after, just realize that there's a need to take action, and there's probably a feeling of fiery, I can do it, don't slow me down. And just again, without being rude, do what you need to do. Trust your instinct. That's the hugest part of this. Trust that what you are inspired, another fire keyword, that you're inspired to do, trust that you need to run with it. There's times when if you don't talk about something, you don't lose energy. You don't leak energy. If you incubate an idea and then you do it, it's very efficient. And I think that's my take anyway. One take on this particular illumination. Okay, so it looks like I am back. Let me go back to my notes. Okay, um, and then of course a few days later, Sun will move into the trine with Mars, March 26th at 6 degrees Aries Sagittarius, continues this story of get done what you need to get done, courageously expand into action. I'm not trying to paint um, a kind of ridiculous, hyper-masculinized picture of this, but it's really about getting something done and trusting that you can do what you need to do. I think some of us don't want to do Mars or Aries energy, or we kind of avoid it because we don't want to be aggressive. We don't want to be over Marsy. We don't want to be obnoxious. We don't want to be, so therefore we sometimes hold back from being assertive because we don't want to be aggressive. This is a cultural issue. This is a global cultural issue that the species is trying to learn how to be assertive but deal with violence and the impact that violence has had. And so Sun trine Mars here in these fire signs is during the eclipse, but also in general for this following few days, is your opportunity to trust your body, trust your instinct. Again, I'm rehashing that, but to really trust that. Let's talk about fire planets and fire signs boosting each other. Now, if you're not grounded, you might drop a lot of dishes, or you might, do something silly that's accidental if you're not directing the energy. If you're not allowing yourself to flow, you might create an accident or something like that. So trust your body, do something physical, exercise, sex, physicality. Um, Listen to your body too, because your body might say, eat less right now because I need to do more, and digestion takes so much energy. So just be really attuned to your body, aware of your body. That's the biggest teaching here. Next aspect, Sun square Pluto, Wednesday, April 6th at 17 degrees. So this is this month. I believe it's 11 days later, Pluto goes retrograde. So Sun will square Pluto while Pluto's grinding to a halt in Capricorn. So Sun in Aries, I must take action. I must do something. I must say yes or no. Square Pluto and Capricorn, who's really in charge? This kind of thing, I generically say power struggles could result, but really it's about, I would say, how much freedom you might give yourself to really do and be who you fully are. The old rules and the old structures based in old rules and other people's ideas of shoulds, those old rules, obviously, with this aspect, again, right around April 6th, become clearly they don't work. It becomes clear that they are inappropriate. What that may feel like to a lot of people is a feeling of being held back, but realize that whatever it is that holds you back externally in 3D, it's reality because it's 3D, but it's not capital T true. You are a divine being creating all of the flow and also all of these strictures. You're creating all of the constriction that you experience. So this is, from a spiritual standpoint, energetic consciousness standpoint, this is this aspect, Sun and Aries square Pluto as it's grinding to a halt in Capricorn, is really to show you the limits you have put on yourself. Okay. Next dealio here is the Aries new moon, Thursday, April 7th, the day after, at 18 degrees Aries, 4:23 a.m. Pacific. Conjunct Uranus, square Pluto, trine Saturn, opposing true black moon Lilith. So let's pull up that chart. This is obviously a completely juicy one, engaging the Pluto square Uranus field. Aries new moon, share screen. Okay, so here we have this little. It looks really piled up just because it's a broad first house, but here we have Moon and Sun at 18 Aries, Uranus at 20, of course, Eris at 22, of course, opposing true black moon Lilith, square Pluto. So basic line, new moon in Aries. Allow something new to happen, bold, courageous, yes and no. Saying yes and no. Giving yourself permission to be in charge of your life. Taking action. being physical, investing in your body, trusting your body's wisdom, its instincts, moving. There's something really important about moving physically that moves energy, that enhances and grounds consciousness. The loudest example I have here is for maybe a year and a half, whenever I was going to charge crystals. Like, I didn't know I was going to do it. I would say, oh yeah, I have these 10 tiger irons or these whatevers, these shivalingams or whatever, and or onyx. I remember specifically with those three. Um, oh yeah, we'll charge them in the next week or three or whatever time is right. I would wake up in the morning, some random day, and I would feel compelled to go to the gym and lift weights. I'd say, fine. I was already doing it 2, 3 times a week anyway, but the timing would always work out that I would have to do it. And it always feels good. I love doing it. But then I would get home and Metatron or Jehudi it was mostly Metatron, especially with like Onyx and Shivalingam. And he would come in and say, now is the time to charge those stones. So I would need to like move my body, get the blood flowing, because energy can then fill your whole body. So I say movement is the best Mars Aries first house prescription there is. I actually debated whether or not to go on a bike ride before doing these videos. I'm going to go after, but I debated because I know that it helps clear my mind and it helps move energy and helps me clear my head. So anyway, and I have Mars Uranus in the first house together natally, so there's there's an important part of that for me. But anyway, moving your body. So new moon in Aries, allow yourself to move. Conjunct Uranus and Eris, it's absolutely critical that you move in ways you need to move, that you do something original, that you don't let anything hold you back, and that you do it on your own. I mean, a new moon in Aries is typically individualistic. Because Aries doesn't want to be, or planets working through the lens of Aries don't want to be held back by committee decision or other people's issues. Just want to do what you want to do. You need to do what you need to do. Um, and then conjunct Uranus, it's even more individualistic. It needs to work forward. It needs to push ahead and look to the future. One of the keys about Uranian energy that I mentioned a little bit ago is if you don't talk about something, this is actually true for Mars and Uranus. If you don't talk about something, then you're not leaking energy about it. If I talk about it, I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking, oh, and then I'll mention it to somebody, and then their opinion comes in the mix, and then I'm like, oh, I wish I wouldn't have. Sometimes that happens when we need to be in a Mars or Uranus groove, and so here we have both of them, in Aries, the new moon in Aries. So you need to be self-interested. You need to do what you need to do. You need to trust your own genius as well as your body. In this case, the information from your wisdom is coming through your body. And then Eris, understanding that you're vulnerable to fear too much change. You're susceptible to fear too much change. You don't want to break free because the great unknown, you're vulnerable. You have vulnerability, and also others do too. And so with Eris in the mix here, all Uranus issues right now are mixed up with Eris. I keep telling you every month. And we feel our raw nerve exposed when somebody pushes our button. So so in this case, you need to break out. Somebody else says, I'm breaking out. I'm not afraid. And you're like, oh, damn, I am afraid. That is that sting of Eris. You're exposing my raw nerve. So recognize that you have vulnerability, but do what you need to do. And the thing is, the more honest we are about Eris, especially as it's with Uranus, when we make changes in our lives, we will ruffle other people's feathers. We will see them experience their own vulnerabilities, their own raw nerves exposed. We have to be okay with it because the key to Eris energy, as we live it, is yes, everybody is constantly catalyzing other people into growth. What it looks like I made you mad. But if what I did made you mad, then you need to be mad to move through that. That's part of your growth, and you're in my space for a reason. We're here for a reason. So do what you need to do, and if other people are aghast or upset, you say, I understand you're upset, but I need to do what I need to do. This is not a new moon for compromise, and it's not a new moon for being a jerk about not compromising. Just to be really clear, trusting yourself, doing what you need to do without apology. And if other people are like, wait a minute, wait up for me, you say, I'll catch up with you when I get this shit done because I got to do my shit. Trine Saturn. So, structure, getting stuff done. At the time of this, Saturn has just gone retro. It's just turned retro within the last few days or last week. So this is, so Saturn's now almost standing still. And, I mentioned this, Pluto square it, it's almost standing still. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the Saturn thing is, yes, do it, dot, dot, dot. If it's the right thing to do, if you planned ahead. And part of you is like, I can't slow down to plan much. And Saturn's like, then stay grounded and focused and present. Okay, if you can't plan ahead, fine. Stay grounded, focused, and present. The square to Pluto almost stationing retro, almost slowed down. In Pluto in Capricorn, the square is you might come up against structures from the past that make you think you shouldn't be free. You might come up against reified structures, things that have been invested with a ton of energy or fear or admiration. They've become bigger than life. But again, they are manifestations of your own consciousness. So if you feel you can't do this because of that, you got to unwind it. And Pluto's saying, dig down into the truth, because you can be free if you let yourself get over the past, if you let yourself get over protective mechanisms that are designed to keep you from being hurt. Taking risk, this Eris Uranus new moon business, taking risks sometimes yields pain. Are you strong enough? And the new moon says, decide you're courageous. Let yourself be strong and courageous. And strong and courageous doesn't mean freight training through a brick wall and saying you don't feel pain. It's being present in the body, making the right choice, grounded, instinctive, navigating something in a conscious way. That is strength. Okay. Opposition to true black moon, Lilith in this chart shows up as OSC period capital L at 22 Libra. In relationship, feathers might get ruffled. Somebody else might want you to slow down and be angry and hurt that you're being selfish. It's just one way to look at this, but there's a reflection from somebody else who might be upset. And your job is to be self-interested without being a jerk, to not compromise while you're not a jerk about not compromising. All right, so that is that. Okay, let me go back to the notes. Okay, and then, part of this, but then just for the record, the last aspect here, Sun conjunct Uranus at 20 Aries a couple days later, April 9th, and then conjunct Eris at 22 Aries 2 days later. So just to wrap this up, when the Sun passes a planet or conjuncts a planet, the full light of conscious awareness is on that. With the situation of this Aries new moon, you might not know much about Eris Uranus's role here. You might just feel, I can't hold myself back because you're afraid. I can't hold myself back because you want to be small. I need to grow. Other person, loved one, family, friend, whatever. But then the Sun conjuncts Uranus, and you get more conscious awareness of the Uranian energy, and then 2 days later, more conscious of the Eris part of it. So realize that this new moon happens on the 7th, and then on the 9th, you might start to have some clarity about what it is, and then on the 11th, some more clarity. Realize it's a field of a few days where one thing is unfolding into conscious awareness. So just be aware of that. So thanks for your time and energy. This is the end of video 2. I hope it was helpful. Take care.